Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Oneness Junkie podcast, hosted by me, Lydia Smith, a self-proclaimed Oneness Junkie. Oneness Junkie is a place to be inspired, encouraged, and supported. Learn from the individuals who are working to make the world a better place. Let's meet today's guest. Hello, everybody. This is Lydia. And today we're having another episode of Conscious Conversations. I have Gib with me today. Hi, Gib.
Hi, Lydia.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
We have had so much fun creating these conversations for everyone to listen to that we decided some more topics popped up. So Gib said, hey, why don't we talk about adversity? Because everybody experiences adversity throughout their lives. And that's a great topic that most people deal with. So I said, sure, let's talk about adversity. Excuse me. So Gib, when I think of adversity, what I think about are, the different levels of adversity. There's global adversity, there's national adversity, there's, governmental adversity, then bringing it closer to home. There's communities that you can be challenged by, your home environment, your work environment. There are so many types of adversities that happen within each of these umbrellas. And then you were talking to me earlier about that they're all kind of under different buckets, like relationship adversities, career, family, physical, and then there's emotional, physical, and spiritual adversity. Right. Either. So let's talk about what are some of the adversities, like more hone in on some that people can identify with. What come to mind for you?
Sure. I'm going to speak from the things that have happened to me in the past and the things that I've had to work through. I've dealt with quite a bit of adversity in my life. My father died while I was in the womb, died in Vietnam in a plane crash. My mother, 15, 16 years ago, took her own life. Wow. Through suicide. So, plus, I've been through divorce. I've been through the political climate, which isn't all that great right now. COVID, these are all, I would consider all of these challenges and adversity. So, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, one thing that stands out for me is like consistency. Like, so one of the things that has been something I've dealt with, and every time I deal with it, I get stronger. And, I've had job changes. I didn't go into a company and stay there for 30 years, like my dad did. I've had multiple job changes, but one of the reasons is because I haven't been satisfied with what I was looking for. So many of them were, self-imposed job changes. So that's something that is adversity for most people when they have a disruption in their income source. That's what happens when you have a job change. I've had, relationship adversity. I've definitely had my share of family adversity. When you grow up with siblings and you're not all really on the same path and you have differences in your life that you're looking into, and maybe, your family members aren't there to be on that same path at the same time. I even had, religious adversity when, I wanted to kind of break away from the traditional Baptist religion that I grew up in, and then went seeking for my own path. I mean, that's adversity right there. Like anything that is a disruption in a way of being. Wouldn't you call that like an adversity?
Of course. And, that brings to mind when I started to realize that I was intuitive. And knowing that, how would I translate that to my friends and my family, and what would they think about me? Would they think, oh, well, he's gone crazy.
Right, right. Or what gives him the knowing or the wisdom to, be all knowing now or something, like some way of not understanding what that means to be intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having to come out to this new level of understanding.
It was a coming out. It was. And, the way that I went through it was by posting about it. I basically, wrote out this long post about what had happened to me. And I would say that was a big step for me, because to work through adversity is by facing it. And so, one of the ways that I did that with that topic was by coming out and just saying what I am and what I do and who, and,
like releasing it. You're like unveiling it. It's like an unveiling or a release or.
Right. And then, working through adversity is about taking ownership of who you are. And when you do that, then you can stand in your truth. And when you stand in your truth, you can, work through things that you might not have been able to do before.
What comes to mind for me is, when you're in a relationship with somebody and it's imbalanced, say it's a lover or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you're really into him and he's not really into you, or vice versa. And, the pain, like, I think that's a really common thing that people suffer from is not somebody might think that you're the one or they're the one, that one's the one, but then the other person doesn't feel the same vibe. And that is painful for people. Like, people have really deep wounded pain around not getting the love that they want from a particular person. And so that's a big adversity. I think a lot of people experience. It's one of the biggest. I think so. Yeah. I think so. And I think
some of the biggest
most people can relate to that, right?
Yeah. Well, like some of the hardest things I've ever been through is that, that I can look back and remember. I mean, there's been harder things, but that one's tough. That was tough because it comes in and, it works on your ego for one thing. Like your ego, if you're rejected by someone else or you reject someone else, this doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And both people, well, usually the one that's not into the person is the one that's got more adversity to work through. Right. So, but yeah, that is definitely one of the more painful ones.
Also you're talking about ego, but I'm going to take it a step further and go deeper. And I think that because when it comes to love relationships, because we have an innate need to all feel like we matter, that is a relationship that can confirm and or deny that you matter. But it's like, well, you don't matter to that person. But that's where you learn how you need to matter to yourself, right? Because you cannot look to other people to identify whether you matter or not. And so I think our relationships of our loved ones are there to teach us how to go inward and really learn to love yourselves to the point that you matter more than anyone else says you matter or not. That's a tough lesson.
That can be quite challenging. And usually what most people do is create distractions to work away so they don't have to,
face it. They don't have to face it. Yeah.
Right. And then distractions could be, there could be all kinds of things. So you could be, I'm going to run and just go work out. I'm just going to run off and go work out. And sure, you might feel better, your body will feel better, but you're still in the same situation.
That's not the worst distraction I could think of. Okay.
Well, that's a healthy one.
So, that's a good one. Yeah. Right. So how about like, eating a tub of ice cream,
Eating a tub of ice cream.
That's
right.
an unhealthy one. That's not serving you.
Right.
You know?
That's not. And then, so if you're, in a, post relationship and you go serial dating to try to fill that
distraction.
cup up.
Yeah.
Just
Like
another
rebound,
distraction.
like
Right.
a rebound.
And then for, people who are on the sensitive side, they'll typically dive into other people's issues instead.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think about too, like, go ahead. Your thought wasn't finished?
Yeah. So like you dive into other people's problems. You don't have to deal with your
face
own.
your own. Yes,
right.
Absolutely. I think healers have that, struggle with that issue, right? Like
they
healers and therapists and stuff, they don't have to deal with their own because they're too worn out dealing with other people, right? Also, like anything that's considered excessive or like an addiction where it becomes a challenge to your life, like, going to the bars and drinking alcohol or drinking alcohol at home, sitting down at home with a bottle of wine every night. So you don't have to feel, right? You feel your pain.
Prescription drugs, right? Smoking weed, doing drugs.
Diving into, movies where you binge watching something till 3 a.m, when your body really needs to sleep, right? Because that's healthy, not staying up till your circadian rhythm is waking up, before you go to sleep.
Or watching, endlessly watching, TV shows, especially on the dramatic side. You're looking like watching ER or Grey's Anatomy. I
was thinking like rom-coms, or you go watch romantic comedies or something,
right? Or The Office, or something funny. but they're all distractions.
Wow, your distractions sound so healthy.
Well, laughing. They haven't always been healthy.
The Office, laughing, that's good for you.
Yeah.
So no, but I mean, I was just pointing out that, there's social media is a distraction, like, getting on and just mindlessly scrolling through what other people's lives are doing instead of looking at your own life, right? There's so many ways that we distract ourselves from facing our own challenges and our own adversity. So with that said, I know that you have a really good way of how you handle, tell me again and tell the audience members about how do you handle, or have you figured out to handle adversity right now in your life that's working for you?
I mean, the goal is to feel better first. That's the goal. So you want to feel better first and then go, find your distraction, go work out, go, listen to your self-help book, or go out with your podcast, or go out with your friends and, have some fun. The way I do it is by checking in first. So, and what I mean by checking in is, I'll sit there. I'm not talking about meditating for 4 hours in the chair. I'm just talking about sitting with yourself, even if it's just for a few minutes, and checking in with your own intuition. And that's where you push into the thing, you push into the thing that you feel adversity about. You push into it. So for instance, when I decided to start dealing with my father's death, which was, about 10 years ago, because I didn't even know him, I decided that I was going to push into it because I had never processed the fact that he, processed that he was gone, that he wasn't here. I never grieved his death. And so by leaning into that and sitting with it and looking directly at it, I was able to push through it. And the way I do that is by checking in.
Checking in. So you're checking in with what? With who?
So when I say checking in, I am tapping into the universal consciousness, into source, to
like
God.
The collective.
a collective, the thing that binds everything together.
Yeah. Source.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's where you can settle yourself, and you don't need to be, if you like working out all the time and you're 80 years old and you can't work out anymore, how are you going to find your peace? Like, the goal of this stuff is to be able to sit with yourself and come up with solutions, as opposed to using distractions or, spiritual, teachings, which are helpful, self-help books, which are also very helpful. But sometimes you just need to sit with yourself. Sometimes you need to sit with yourself to find and work your way through something. And so when you do that first and then go listen to your self-help book, when you do that first and then go work out, you're already 10 times farther ahead. So the benefits you get from doing those things like self-help books and working out and, learning more about spirituality, is a way to propel you forward through the adversity.
I know that you talk a lot about body, mind, and spirit. That's kind of your trifecta or your trio that you like to always have as the main staples of living, the important parts of living. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about body, a lot of times you'll say, when you create movement, any kind of movement really in your body, mm-hmm. it helps to move energy. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times adversity is just stuck energy, right? Because it's not clarity. If mm-hmm. you have clarity of mind, you don't really give a lot of attention to the adversity. You learn how to let it, water off of a duck's back, right? Mm-hmm. Water and oil don't mix, that mm-hmm. kind of analogy, where mm-hmm. it just is it's not affecting you, basically. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the trio okay. of the mind as it relates to adversity. Okay, let's address each one. Mm-hmm. So I just talked about the body. Do you want to say anything more about the body? Sure.
So there's the body, mind, and the spirit, and you need balance between all three. You can't, if you're not doing all three, you should be. And the advice is to feel better and then focus on those things. So for me, there was a lot of focus on my spirit and my mind. I was focusing on developing my intuitive gifts. I was focusing on developing my interactions with other people and relationships. Yeah. And emotional trigger, how to deal with triggers, all different kinds of responding, like how to respond to people when you're in relationship with them. Right. And the thing that I was missing was the body and doing the harder work there. And so when I started pushing my body, doing things that I wouldn't have ever considered doing before, and I'm not saying that these listeners need to run out and hike, rim to rim from the Grand Canyon, but like pushing yourself past your edge in all three of those things. Yeah, getting out of your comfort zone. Getting out of your comfort zone teaches you how to work through that. And so with me, pushing my body gave me, you can carry trauma in the body. You can carry past adversity within the body itself. They say the issues are in the tissues. Issues are in the tissues, right? Yes, exactly. So when you start working the muscle, literally, it can create more space. The goal is to doing these three things is to create space for you to expand. So if you're in a settled place, you're going to come up with solutions much more quickly than you would if you were, turning away from the things, solutions for working through adversity.
I wonder why. I mean, this is just like a very big, broad question, but I wonder why we distract ourselves so much. Is it just because the human experience is so adverse to pain?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we do not want to feel uncomfortable, right?
Right.
We do
Yeah.
everything to avoid uncomfortableness. And I wanted to go back and share my own way that I address adversity. I am like, some of my big themes in my life are about one, my desire is to be authentic. That's really big for me, is always to have authenticity. I really have a strong personal sense of my personal integrity. And, like, sometimes it's to my own detriment because I have a principle of integrity, but it would be easier to just take this easier road, the handout. But then I have this integrity thing. And so then I'm struggling more for my principle. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm just sharing what I do. And then also facing, like, almost like too much, like facing, I don't even know if there's like too much that you could face, but like to the point where you're always trying to fix something, like you're just not content and settled. And I'm sharing that because I think that's part of an imbalance, right? It's like the opposite of avoidance,
right?
To always be working on yourself, or always be dialoguing about it, or always finding friends you can, because I think it feels it creates an imbalance if you're always looking at your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's right. And there's too little, and then there's too much.
Yeah.
And so usually when someone does that, they're over focusing. It'll usually be one of those areas, either body, mind, or soul. So you've got, the person that works out incessantly,
right. And doesn't look at their spiritual side at all.
Right. Like, not looking at the spiritual side at all they do is listen to self-help books and Abraham Hicks and Deepak and, Marianne Williamson and all the other, gurus out there. They just dive in it.
Like, through osmosis, you're going to just get better just from listening.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or you dive into spiritual teachings and learn just solely about spirituality. So what it does is it creates an imbalance. So you can have too much and you can have too little. And what you need is balance between all three. You need to be working through all three.
Yeah. And I'm very aware, and I'm just going to be authentic right now on this podcast and tell everybody what my own thing is that I, have spent a lot of time on, working on my mind and my emotional intelligence. I have almost completely avoided the whole physical side of myself. And I'm looking at that. I'm working on that. I'm asking the questions. Just the fact that we're having this dialogue is, a conscious conversation about where my imbalance is. Unfortunately, my imbalance is actually visible to the outside world. So walking around in an imbalanced state is, it's vulnerable, and it's, like if you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, that's not always visible. Or if you're addicted to porn at night or during the day, that's not a visible trait, but having a body out of balance is. And so it's been my teacher. It's been a teacher. And I've learned to, I've learned some great skills. I mean, there's some people that admire the confidence that I seem to exude in spite of my imbalance. So there's been some great gifts that I've received from the experience, and I also honor it because I want to shift it. So I honor and thank it for what it's provided for me, the lessons that it's provided me, but I also know that it's energy I want to shift. And that's why we're having this conversation about how to shift energy, find the areas of your life that are out of balance and imbalance, and then focus on those so that they can all kind of have an equilibrium of mind, body, and spirit. And I just think that this is a conversation that I think everybody can find somewhere in their life where they're out of balance. Okay. So for some person, it's spiritual. For another person, it's, emotional. And for another person, it's physical. It's just, we're all experiencing the same human experience. Right. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and Gib and I we are having these conversations among ourselves, and we wanted to bring it to the audience. And one of the things that Gib, I just met Gib like 3 months ago, and we have, connected on a similar path of what we want to do out in the world as far as providing healing and support and help for those who are seeking it. And I approached him and said, hey, you're so good at this. Why don't you teach a workshop? And he was like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. So we are putting together, or we actually have a workshop planned for January 22nd. It's going to start at 10 a.m. Central Time, and it's going to go for 4 hours with a 1 hour break for lunch. But it's going to be really great because you can just wake up, get your coffee made, stay in your comfy clothes or your pajamas, hop on your Zoom, and we're going to make it really interactive. It was really important. Gib said, I definitely want an interactive workshop for the people to really get something out of it. So, Gib, do you have anything about the workshop that you want to share? Like, what are you going to be teaching us?
Sure. We're going to be talking about some of the things I've been talking about today, is like how to actually check in. Like, how do you get a message? Like, what is the process? What do you do?
Like the steps, you're going to provide the steps.
We're going to talk about opening and closing, how to clear, how to set up healthy energetic boundaries. All of those things are practical tools and can be done just about anywhere, with the goal of, like today, if you were trying to work through something that's been bothering you, something, an adverse situation, you can use these tools to help you punch through it.
Well, and also we've actually titled the workshop, Get Answers to Your Biggest Questions, Discovering Your Superpower and How to Access It Frequently. Mm-hmm. And really, we came up with that title because everybody has questions. I mean, people come to you all the time, Gib, and ask you to help them with answers, right? Mm-hmm. But what you're trying and wanting to teach the world is that the answers are inside of you, mm-hmm. inside of me. Right. And you're going to teach us the steps, the process, the characteristics of how to access the answers for ourselves so that you don't mm-hmm. have to go to someone else for your answers. You mm-hmm. can be autonomous and right. you can learn how to be self-sustainable, right?
That's right. And the goal isn't for, everybody to go become a practitioner, right? And, giving readings to people, it's so they can tap into their own information and use it in a practical way. You're having trouble with your boss. You're having trouble dealing with your kiddos. You're having trouble in relationship. You're having trouble with family. Sometimes just talking to your friends isn't going to, I'm sure you can get valuable information from some of your friends, but sometimes you just need to check in with you. Your best source of information is you. So by taking a workshop like this, it allows you to learn how to connect with yourself and ask questions that some of which you could have been wondering about most of your life. So, it helps you discover solutions and work through adversity.
Right. And I do recognize that having a supportive person like yourself, to work through this. Sometimes that is that's a good solution for especially like a beginner who needs that one-on-one training and hand-holding. I mean, that's helpful. Not everybody has the resources to buy the time of a practitioner. So we're creating a workshop that is getting you access to, that's a lot more budget friendly, that can have more people have access to this information than you might be able to find, otherwise. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up is you're going to help us identify intuitive messages. First of all, you're going to show us where they are and then how to recognize them. That's like a key, I think, that people don't realize, all the different ways that messages and answers can come to you. And sometimes if you don't know what to look for, you're going to miss it. Right?
Right.
Let's talk about that, because that's a big one. The messages are all around us, right? We talk about that all the time.
Right.
It's being able to see them and identify them. That is, what maybe you need to, the muscle you need to work.
Right. So one of the things we'll teach is about how to trust the messages that you're getting, because we all get information coming in, and sometimes it's hard to sift through what we're actually supposed to hear. And, spirit works through your imagination, and the messages always come from love. So by those two tenets, and basing your practice on those two tenets, there's a wealth of information out there for all of us to tap into.
Yeah, that's good. Also, there's different ways the messages come in. Do you want to just touch on, some of the various ways the messages get shown to people? Because it's really diverse.
It is. They can come in so many different ways. You can feel something, you can hear something, you can sense something, you could see something, you could smell or taste, or even have a sense of knowing. That's one of your superpowers, is a sense of knowing.
I love that one. I'm sorry, but I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's good. It's good.
Right.
I want to tell this story about a knowing. Okay. I like storytelling, Gib. We're going to throw in a story here. Okay.
Stories are good. Yeah.
And this is personal. I hope my landlord doesn't listen to this podcast. So one night, I actually had just finished talking to you. It was late, and we just finished a session, and I hadn't had dinner yet. It was like 9 o'clock. I was like, oh, I just want to make something easy. So I was going to make some popcorn, but like the old fashioned way, where you put it in a pan and heat it over the stove, and I was going to do coconut oil and then popcorn. And man, I was just so distracted. I bet I was just because my head was on the space of working on myself. And my sister called. And so she was asking me questions about my aunt, who's, medical issues and all this stuff. And I put the oil on the open flame gas stove while I was on the phone, but I didn't put the popcorn in. And then I walked to the back of the house, not even thinking that I just turned on a hot oil stove. But I was back in my room for about 5 minutes in my back of my house. And all of a sudden I had a knowing, oh my gosh, I left. And it wasn't like I was just, I left some oil on the stove. I ran through the hallway because I knew that was a bad formula. And I was right. There were 29-inch flames, the width of a pan, like the pan I was cooking the oil in, the diameter is the word of the pan, thick, full, all the way up to the vent hood. and about 12 inches above the pan was my cabinets. So the flames were already hitting the cabinets, and the flames were as high 29 inches above at the vent hood, which is almost 3 feet of flames. And I freaked out. And luckily, if it had been like a minute later, 2 minutes later, any amount of time later, my kitchen would have been completely on fire. And it would have been such a big fire that I couldn't have doused it out with a lid or with a baking soda, which is what I ended up being able to grab, because you put out oil fires with baking soda. So I was so grateful for my awareness and to do it quickly, like not just walk and think, that's not, happening. I knew something detrimental was already in action, and it was fast enough for me to put it out. But my house was filled with smoke all the way from the ceiling to like my chest area. So thank God it was not lower, because my dog, wouldn't have been able to breathe. But it was bad. It was so bad. And I had to clear out the house. So that's a long story just to share, that.
Well, the goal was that you got some information, and you knew, even though there's no practical reason why you should have thought of it. There's no, it doesn't make, in some ways it doesn't make any sense, but what does make sense is that you listened to the message
and responded.
You responded and you owned it. And let me ask you this question. How did the message feel when you got it?
Well, fear. I mean, I felt like shit, oh shit. Right. That was my message. Instant.
Well, right.
But what are you asking me?
That's the reaction, right? So that's your reaction, like, oh shit, I got to get in there.
Well, it came in my head, if that's what you're asking.
Right. The message comes in. How did it feel? Like, yes, the reaction was scary, but you received the message. So
it was like a knowing. I mean, it was a knowing.
Right. You had a deep sense of understanding and knowing that the message was true.
Right. Enough to run, not walk.
Enough to run, not walk. Like you received the message and you owned it, and look what it did for you.
Right. I listened to it, versus like going like, oh, whatever. I can't say any people's names, but I want to share something that happened this week that a friend of mine, I touched base with a friend of mine's daughter through Messenger, and she said, I have big news. Well, it could have been anything, right? For someone to say I have big news. I mean, the sky's the limit on big news that anyone could have, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's like so broad.
I've discovered aliens.
Right. Exactly. I have big news.
Yeah.
And so I thought of like two things that it could have been. I was thinking she's young, newlywed, and I thought, maybe she's pregnant, because that's kind of like big news for people. And then I thought the next thing was, maybe her mom has this particular disease. It was like a very specific disease that I thought she might have. Okay.
And this just came to you.
Yeah. I was driving in Sugar Land. I mean, I was driving while I'm, like looking in between red lights at the text messages. Mm-hmm. And then she goes, I go, well, call me. And she said, well, I'm sending it via Messenger for people to process first. And I was like, I can process anything. I was thinking that. And she sent the message, and it was exactly the disease that I thought she might have. Mm-hmm. And it's not common for young people to have it. So it was like that was like confirmation for me about the muscle that I've been working with you to build is getting stronger. And it's like really neat to, trust that. Right.
Right. And so really it's all about trust. It's all about trust. You have to be able to trust the messages when they come in. We've all, I'm sure anybody that's listening to this podcast has had some type of experience like you have. And there's been some point in your life where you've listened to the message you received and you acted on it, and something amazing or something good happened. So, what I want to teach people is, instead of it just being random situations, how to actively focus on and practice it with intention instead of it just happening on its own, which is great, is by actually focusing and practicing and exercising that muscle. And so you know how to ask these questions and get answers, not just through, events where you're, just kind of driving along the road.
Right. Or distracted, right? I'm just distracted and then it happens.
Right. Which is a great way to receive the messages. And, what we'll teach is, even when those situations happen, how to trust that.
Right. But I know where you were going. You were going with how to utilize the skill to your benefit, right? To get the burning questions and to also like manifest. Let's talk about that. This sounds like a good segue into using it to manifest. Is that where you were going?
Well, yeah, you can use this not just to solve, problems, but to, create new awareness around things, to expand your universe. So if you're having trouble at your work, or you've just lost your job, or you just got out of a relationship, or you're fighting with a family member, or you want to have a closer relationship with a family member. So what you can do is go check in and say, hey, how can I get closer with my sister? And so when you check in, you'll get, you can get all kinds of different messages. So like, there might be a suggestion, or you got an impression that you should start calling her every certain amount of times a week, or that you should take them, like you could picture yourself doing something with them, like run out and go for a run or something, so you can connect. And so you get the message and you act on it. Well, I got this message. I need to call you, and we should go running. So when you go running with them, that's when the magic happens. That's when, you'll become, like, let's say you become closer, you'll have a conversation that connects you even more. So there's some magic here that you can tap into.
Right. And I love telling examples, because I think that's what people relate to, is the excitement of the proof when they have the stories that validate what you're saying. Okay. So I'm going to be the storyteller again. I'm going to tell another story. I love this one. Okay. So last September, I was watching Hulu, and first of all, let me preface it by saying I was the business development manager director for a hydroponic farm for the last 4 years. And I was a startup, and my job was to grow the business, to find leads. Okay. And when it came time for us to want to go after a big grocery store chain, I didn't want to go talk to the produce manager who's, buying for the local, Westheimer store. I like to go top down. So I was watching Hulu, a show, and the president of Kroger came across the screen, and I wrote his name down. It's Joe Kelly. And I said, I want to meet him. Okay. And so that was September. And then when I went to bed that night, it was about 10:30, 11. And I thought, hey, I'm going to Google him. So I Googled him, his LinkedIn came in, and I was like, what the heck? I didn't even have my LinkedIn, updated, but I was like, what the heck? And I hit connect. And within 15 minutes on a Friday night, he connected with me on LinkedIn. So I was like, ooh, I'm getting closer, right? Now I have a way to email him, right? So I just, put it to the side. I told my boss that I got that far. We weren't ready yet to approach them, so I wasn't going to go right after it. So that was September. Then Thanksgiving week of that same, 2 months later, I decided to go, I'm going to shampoo my carpet. So I decide, which Kroger do I want to go rent a shampooer from? The Kroger here, this direction, or the Kroger that direction? And then I just decided I'm going to go to the Kroger closest to my house. So I rolled out of bed. My hair looked like a rat's nest. I had pajamas on basically. and I go to Kroger, and guess what happens? The universe at 8 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday delivers me Mr. Joe Kelly with a little entourage of 6 men circling him as they're floating through the store. And they were right at the butcher's thing. And I asked the guy who was stocking the coffee shelves, I go, is that Mr. Joe Kelly? And he was like, that's the man. And my heart started pounding because I was like, oh my God, I'm in a moment where the universe is literally delivering Mr. Joe Kelly, to me on a platter at my Kroger store, Mm-hmm. And so I had to make a decision. I look like a mess. This is not the best first impression, should I really do this? And I was like, I have to. I can't let my ego stop me from what I was calling the one chance the universe was giving me to do this. And I was so excited.
And you worked through, it was a way to work through adversity.
Yes. And so basically I put all my stuff down, looked for my purse for a card. I always have a business card, but I didn't have a business card with me. And so I said hello to him. There was a guy that was trying to block me from talking to him, but he turned around and I talked to him and I told him what I was up to. And he's like, reached into his pocket and he handed me his business card with his email. And he said, well, send me the information when you get it and I'll send it up to Cincinnati. And so the end of the story is I ended up having to wait. That was November. I ended up having to wait till April because our farm wasn't ready to approach a big, multiple stores like that. But in April, I did start the process, reached out to him. I got the top of the top in Kroger to get on my first call. They said yes on our first call. The farm is now at this point, last 3 weeks ago, delivering, Butterhead lettuces live in hydroponics tables to the Kroger stores, all around Houston. And right. It's a good story.
It's a good story. So, let's tie it together. So
tie it together for me.
You stopped and you checked in. You asked specifically, you told the universe what you wanted to manifest, right? And then when it was randomly shown up for you by seeing this man, at the grocery store and you're all disheveled. And there's a part of you, I'm sure, that'd be like, well, I'm going to just run on out of this store right now. Right.
Yeah. It's not a good first impression.
But you decided not to do that. And the reason why is because you felt guided. And
also I care about being authentic. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to be authentic. This is who I am. And he appreciated it.
Right. And there could be a ton of different motivators, right? The motivators to push you through that. But, the thing that happened was that you got guidance and you were presented a solution and you pushed through adversity to resolve it.
Follow through. So this is good. I need to share this because when the universe honors us, we need reciprocity to honor the universe for the gift, the gratitude for the gift that the universe provided. If I would have walked away because my ego was worried about, I don't want this to be my first impression, I'm dissing the universe. Right. I'm saying no to the universe. And what do you think the universe is going to provide me? A like vibration and frequency of future no's. Mm-hmm. That's why we have to say yes. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I want to say is when we left each other that day, the last thing he said to me was their tagline. He goes, well, thank you for shopping at Kroger. And so but think about that. The fact that I was shopping, I looked like, a rat's nest, and I still approached him was the authenticity he needed to know that he wanted to help someone like me. I look like the pauper. I look like the pauper with a handout. And so now I have the largest grocery store in Texas, buying our products.
Right. Well, and, in working through adversity, you have to have courage. You have to have courage to sit there and push through something. It's not just all about, going to work out and, you know, self-help books and spiritual classes. Like you have to dig a little deeper and push through those things. We talked in the beginning of the podcast about being uncomfortable and how hard it is to step up and work through the uncomfortableness and to sit with it and be okay with it. And I really feel like if people sat with that a bit more, there'd be a lot more solutions there. And one of the ways they're able to do that would be taking a class like this.
Yeah. What I love is that, when people hire you, it's dedicated time, it's totally focused. Obviously, there's more, time and attention. So it's more expensive, to have one-on-one 90 minutes with Gib. But the workshop, you're going to get a very similar experience with the interaction of others. And actually, I just did another workshop a month or so ago, and there was about 30, 40 people on it. And I have to say that because of the participants and our sharing with each other about what we were working on and addressing, that made the workshop so much more valuable. And also, I learned a lot more from the diversity of seeing, like maybe it's not my problem, but maybe my friend or loved one has that problem. And now I can see with more compassionate eyes what my friend or loved one could be going through because that other participant shared their story, shared their challenge, shared what they were working on. And so it's so cool when you have interactive workshops to learn from each other.
Well, yeah. And the most powerful workshops that I've ever been to and the best work is usually when you're interacting with each other and not just listening to someone teach you something.
Yeah. You like to say
the talking head. A talking head. It's like blah, 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 blah. After a while, you're just going to tune out.
You can't stand the talking head.
Well, no. And, we don't want to be sitting up there talking the whole time. We want participation. We want people to connect. And the way you do that is by being open, being vulnerable, talking about what's going on. It's not like you got to spill all the beans when you're, there, when there's no expectation.
There's no expectation there. Hey, speaking of connecting, one of the benefits of taking the workshop in January is upon completion of the workshop, everyone who participated is going to be invited to participate in a private Facebook community called Hope Circles. And the hope, aside from what the word means, which is, positivity and opportunity and future, is that it's an acronym, HOPE, and it stands for helping others process energy. And the point of the circle on the private Facebook group that you will be a part of that community is that by being inside this private group, you're aligning with like-minded people who have learned the things that you have learned. And now you have a place to go to have like-minded conversations. You can ask questions, you can get advice, you can give advice. And this is just an open forum where there are no wrong answers because everyone is on their own journey. Gib and I don't have all the answers. That's why we're teaching you how to go inside and find your answers, because your answers are as unique as you are. And everyone is a unique individual, and there's no one else like you. So when you learn how to go inside and get your own answers, you're liable to give less advice out there in the world because you understand that people have their own answers. So it's really just a way to support each other on our own individual journeys. Am I right, Gib?
Yes. Yes. And that's such a, people need that outlet, especially these days. Having a place to bounce questions around these topics around with other like-minded individuals is important. Some of the best teachings I've ever learned aren't from going to classes. They're by interacting with like-minded people. And, it doesn't matter where they are in their life, how evolved they are, how knowledgeable they are. It's really about the intention of the Hope Circle and how we connect with each other.
Yeah. And I enjoy getting input from other people because it helps open me up to different perspectives. But I always want to get my answers from within when the time comes. So this feels like a good time to close the episode. Do you have anything else you think we need to share with the episode listeners?
Sure. I'm glad you guys took the time to listen today. We're really excited about the work we're going to do on January 22nd at the workshop. I feel like, when I started using these tools myself, it changed my life and it changed it for the better. And anybody that's known me can say that's true.
Yeah, the before, the pre, and the after.
Right, the pre and the after.
Yes. Okay, well, for any of you that are curious, like how can you learn more about the workshop? We're going to put the information on a link on Gib's website. So you can go to gibbroadhead.com and we're going to probably get that up this weekend. So it may be, we'll probably have it up before I launch this podcast, but just want you to know you can go there and look for a link that says workshop or events. And then under there may be the workshop, and you're welcome to email him or me. And I think you have info@gibbroadhead.com, right? You can email info@gibbroadhead.com and someone will get your answers to you. Right. The other thing I want to invite our listeners to do is, if you have any topics of conversations that you want to be addressed on Conscious Conversations for Gib or I to have conversations about and have discussions, we invite you to submit those. You can also email those to info@onenessjunkie.com. The other thing I want to invite you to do is, if you would like to have an experience be a part of a live interaction or episode where we have Gib do something live with you, maybe address a burning question or concern. We could, if you want to, put yourself out there, email us and give us your suggestion, and we'll see if we can work something like that up, because we're talking about doing a few of those every now and then, just to give an experience of what Gib can do for people.
Yeah. And it'll be, those are always a lot of fun. They're super interesting. The things that come up and the answers that come are always enlightening. And, it's always an interesting and fun experience. And that's the goal of the workshop. I don't want people coming in all, oh my God, I'm so scared, which is okay. It's okay to have fear, but the goal of the workshop is to connect and have fun.
Yeah.
To connect and have fun with it.
That's going to be my 2022 goal, is to have more fun. Do you think
all of our goals?
I was going to say, do you think I have enough fun already, Gib?
No.
Do you think I need to tone it down? I don't know. I'm on the edge about that. I think I might need to rein it in a little bit. I think I'm having too much fun right now. I definitely know these podcast episodes are so fun for me And I just started them and I am having a blast. So if any of you have any guest suggestions, feel free to email your suggestions of people who are out there using their time and talents to make the world a better place. I would love to hear and meet new people to highlight. So feel free to email me at info@onenessjunkie.com or just go to onenessjunkie.com and hit the contact us link. You can find me that way too. While I'm here, if you want to follow Gib, he's on Instagram at Gibbogram. And isn't that two B's? Gibbo Graham. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also follow Oneness Junkie on Instagram. And that's just a good way to stay connected on a regular basis. Follow us on Instagram and see what we up to.
Right. And if you have any questions, just feel free to, for friends on Facebook or Instagram, just go ahead and send me a request if we're not
a direct message
already, and just send me a direct message if you have any questions.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. You can also email him at info@gibbroadhead.com if you want to send him a direct email. If you're not on Instagram, not everybody's on Instagram, right?
Right.
So some people need to just go old fashioned email.
Right.
And his snail mail address is just kidding. We're not doing that.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, okay, I'm getting too silly. I need to rein it in. Gib is shaking his head. Yes, Lydia, write it in. Shut it down. Y'all can't see that. All right, guys. Well, y'all have a great day. Keep listening, subscribe, and let us know what you want to discuss on another episode at Oneness Junkie Podcast. So thank you all. Thanks, Gib.
Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, everybody.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. We've reached the end of this episode. If you'd like to continue with this inspirational journey, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. If you are a self-proclaimed oneness junkie, get yourself a t-shirt and spread the message of oneness in your community. And finally, if you have a story to share or know someone that should be a guest on this podcast, contact us at onenessjunkie.com. See you next time. And remember, when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. Compassion starts with you and me.